Hello, I'm Sarah Jensen, editor of OEM OffHighway, and welcome to Design and Engineering Insights. Today, I'll be speaking with Jeremy Harson, Cummins Global Construction Manager, about some of the alternative power sources and sustainability technologies the company is developing and seeing in the heavy equipment industry. So thank you, Jeremy, for joining me today.
Happy to be here.
So maybe just to kind of start, what do you guys maybe see is the future of off-highway power looking like?
Everybody wants to talk about the future stuff, but if you let me, I'd spend just maybe a minute or two talking about, some of the historical and even the current stuff. I think, future technology and off-highway honestly kind of starts now. A lot of the stuff that we've put in production in the last few years is going to be the future for the off-highway market for, maybe the next decade and a half type of thing. So, if you jumped in the time machine and maybe pushed the Wayback button, right? I was looking at some material that our marketing friends here at Cummins had put together for our 100th anniversary, and there was a kind of a interesting graphic in 1919 when we kind of came around. There was this HVID product, which was, kind of a flagship. And they compared it to our latest and greatest kind of B67, which from an off-highway perspective is our current flagship. At first I thought that's kind of silly, right? But I looked at it a little bit more and I'm like, it's actually pretty impressive. You've got what used to be a 3 horsepower engine. And then today we're talking about something that's 325, right, on the upper end. That's cool. At the same time, though, the thing makes like 99% less emissions, 100 times the power in a little bit, and then 99% less emissions. If you scroll maybe forward a little bit to modern times, off-highway's been on this emissions journey since I think maybe 1996. That's when, pure regulated emissions started to come into focus. And, we were able to go through all mechanical product, I think all the way into the early 2000s. At that point, something called Tier 3 came along, and that's when we started to see electronic engines and another one where it feels kind of weird to be talking about it today in 21. But what really happened is that's actually the current product that carried us up into 2011. And then for a lot of folks, even longer than that, because we had some kind of shift over provisions to let OEMs kind of phase into the newer tech. So there's a whole lot of field population that's yet to turn. And if you look at some of the equipment life cycles, it's probably going to start happening in the next few years. And then you come out of Tier 3, we're into this, I like to call it the emissions marathon. We've all got our stories about DOC, DPF, EGR, these kind of technologies that migrated from automotive into the off-highway world. Tier 4 interim and final, it was all about how do you make these different Lego blocks work together in the off-highway world, right? It's a lot of stuff we just not dealt with. We got ourselves in good standing by Tier 4 final, and then for the first time in a long time, Europe and the US kind of diverged, and Europe went one step further for Stage 5 product. Really, by that point, we're feeling pretty comfortable with the different Legos, and we started to think about, all right, how can we add in a lot more value? And those would be the current products that we're, selling the most of today. If you look at, again, that 6.7 example, we're knocking on 325 horsepower. We're talking north of 1,000 foot-pounds of torque. Just opens up a lot of opportunity. You've got downsizing from used to be a 9-liter engine. A lot of times you can do it with a 6.7. That's common across the range, above and below. Down speeding, some of these other trends to be more fuel efficient. And then some of the other stuff is, start-stop functionality is something we've launched with that product. It definitely is an opportunity to even go further when you think about emission savings on things that we have right now. The big challenge with that, I think, in particular, is it's operator acceptance. I'm a little bit in the don't practice what I preach. Sometimes can't. My truck, the first thing I do sometime in the morning is push that button to turn that off. And I have to remind myself now it's there for good reason. I actually let my mother borrow my truck not too long ago. And she's in the middle of town and she'd never driven something with that. So she's freaking out a little bit thinking the truck's broke. So anyway, it just takes some time to get through that roadblock. And, there are examples, 20-ton excavator in our space is kind of our big application, or one of them. And there's been downsizing trends, right? I mentioned power and torque come up, engine size goes down. There's been a pretty steady shift from 6-cylinder to 4-cylinder product in that space. So if you look at kind of the whole package of what you can do with today's stuff, you've got platforms that as we've went farther in emissions, every time you pick up a little bit of fuel economy, so you got that fleet turn. You've got things like downsizing, so you can pick up another % or two going from a bigger engine to a smaller one. And you throw something like that start stop on top of that, and all of a sudden you've got something that makes a pretty big difference, just from a field population and the emissions and fuel consumption and things that are being put out.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. Well, so then maybe going kind of back to the just future topics, how does the company foresee sustainability initiatives and emissions reduction technology developments in the heavy duty on and off highway industries continuing to evolve in the coming years?
Yeah, so I'm the off-highway guy. They probably don't want me talking a ton about on-highway, but I'll give you the limited knowledge that I have. But my responses are mainly off-highway. The one thing we know from diesel space, and I think we'll continue to see it in the diesel space, and I think it's going to be the same for non-diesel technology, is we tend to lag, right? At least a few years. And a lot of the challenges as you think about alternate power, so electric, hydrogen, those type of things, automotive's still building out, and trucks are mobile. The infrastructure to support a lot of this new tech is not even where it needs to be for automotive. So when you think about off-highway, that gets amplified quite a bit, right? We've got equipment that's, I like to say job-centric versus site-centric. So we have some population, think ports, think airports. You've got a field population there that stays in one spot for pretty much its whole life. The majority of what we sell in like earth moving space, so wheel loaders, excavators, those are more job site centric. They kind of do a job, they move on. For me, I live pretty close to I-65 and really good for business, really bad for my nerves, but there's always construction projects, right? When I drive by, I look quite a bit. I've never seen an electric plug sticking out of the dirt, right? So just, those infrastructure challenges are real, and they're going to take time to kind of come along. Despite that, the market itself, definitely a push for green, right? Everybody wants to be corporate responsibility, corporate initiatives to kind of drive some of this down. And despite all the obvious challenges, you've got every major market players out talking about something, right? Some of them even have, I'm going to say, commercially available product. And I think available is an important word to kind of expand on. It's not necessarily viable from a commercial perspective, right? There's a price today to be green, and that's going to take some time. So if you think about what that journey looks like, right, we've got to figure out, as we're approaching zero, how do we kind of do it in a logical way? There's, again, a lot of stuff you can do with the technologies that's out there now. So why not, right? So you think about that fleet turn conversation. Think about some of this, added capability, taking advantage of downsizing, down speeding, that start stop. The other thing that, is starting to come around are alternate fuels like HVO and biodiesel and different things. They've got their own scale challenges and definitely added cost, right? Luckily, there are some areas, California, Oregon, those type of places, I think there are some incentives or breaks for end users who might use those things. But, elsewhere, it's still a little more expensive. But, things that we could do today are already available. When you think about alternate power rollout, it's all over the place on what's going to be the winning solution. But one thing's clear, right? It's going to be not just one, it's going to be several, right? And that's going to take time to kind of build out. And as we get through that, we're going to be talking about, at least one more round of diesel, right? So I continue to tell folks like diesel's, I don't think dying anytime soon, right? I think there's a lot more to be gained. And, 10 years from now, I don't expect the technology of what diesel is today is going to look a whole lot like it does 10 years from now, right? It's going to be a lot of cool stuff coming in that space. There will be pockets of things that take up battery or hydrogen. Infrastructure challenges, right? They're going to limit those. I think it's good that we've got some early adopting kind of niches of the market because that's going to let us kind of test it out and get better as we go. And again, come back to maybe that job site versus, kind of site centric type stuff, right? Some's going to lend itself more to that infrastructure being in place. Some it's going to be a lot more challenging. Whatever it's going to be, right? It's got to be something that you can actually drive some scale, right?
Mhm.
Because, people want to be green, but at the same time, not unlimited funds, right? So something's going to have to happen where the scale develops. And then the other important thing that we talk about here is you think about how you get the power. So well to wheels, I think, is a pretty common industry term. Sure, you can have hydrogen or electric, but you got to think about how that actually got made.
Right.
And you got to figure out, ways that you can kind of decarbonize that whole emissions chain. And that's where you get into some of these things like different shades of hydrogen, right? Depending on how you make it is how green it really is. And then, you also get into some interesting stuff like infrastructure bills and all that, right? Those are the type of things that are going to help accelerate this. Maybe not all the way, but, definitely kind of set us in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then maybe besides power sources, are there any other market trends you're excited about?
Yeah. So as part of my construction segment role, I moonlight as our digital connectivity leader. And that's been a trend that I've been pretty excited about for the last couple of years. Just a lot of opportunity there and opportunity for us to partner with our OEMs, and we have joint customers. So from our view, for us to succeed, our OEMs in the middle have to succeed. So what we want to do is leverage that digital capability, improve that customer experience for the owner of the equipment. And then that's going to build preference for our OEM customers. And then obviously that means we sell more products. So we're kind of approaching it that way. The opportunity space is huge. If you look at an off-highway repair, right, or a customer, again, a lot of these things are off grid.
Right.
So when you have somebody that has a problem, right, and they call the shop, a lot of times you could be a couple hours away, 3-4 hours away in some cases. Most of the repairs, like historically, that technician leaves with little to no information, right? So they're driving out 2-3 hours, trying to figure out what's wrong, driving back to a shop, ordering some parts and kind of repeat. You got redundant travel and different things in there, which just means the customer's sitting down longer. So one of the big things we're trying to work through is to get the right connections in place to where when they have a problem and you call a distributor or a dealer, we've got some idea what's going on, right? And then ideal case, you throw the part on the truck, you drive once, fix it. Good for customers. They're up and running quicker. Really good for service locations. So the availability of capable techs and availability of ones that travel, it's hard to come by. So the more efficient you make any given tech, the better it is, I kind of crossed that whole chain. And then the other thing that's interesting for digital, there's this autonomy trend that's been going on in different parts of the market. So now you're moving from, traditionally having a person in the cab driving the machine. There are some cases where that may be totally remote control, maybe no person at all, and just all system based. So when you think about an engine that's in an equipment where there's nobody to notice a check engine light, all of a sudden just being able to see that kind of remotely becomes even more important. So there's a lot of opportunity there, I think, to add value. And then if you think about a lot of this autonomy stuff is even targeted to be able to get jobs done faster and more efficient. So just having that connectivity that helps that autonomy happen is also, kind of indirectly going to lower emissions output for the industry. So a lot of cool stuff there.
Right. Okay. Well, maybe just to kind of cap off the conversation, is there maybe like one piece of advice that you could offer or have one ask to the marketplace, and what might those be?
Yeah, my advice is probably a little bit too informal, but I think it's saddle up. I think we've got a really kind of interesting decade, maybe a decade plus coming our way. Again, a lot of trends that people are going to need to react to in the OEM space. Regulatory stuff. You're going to have, likely more emissions coming at the end of the decade. We're going to have all these different technologies that are being kind of put in front of people, right? So if you walk the trade show floor a year ago and probably a year from now, you would think, my goodness, the market is just going to be all this new stuff in 5 years. Not the case, right? So I think the request or advice would be to kind of just get ready for that, embrace, and request wise, I would just plead for patience, right? I think as new technology comes out, it stimulates a lot of interest, which is great, and people kind of want to jump straight from seeing something on the trade floor to a demonstration unit, and it's a lot of work and effort to put into that, right? So we need to just make sure that we're throttling that activity to when the market's actually going to pull it. and just kind of go about it in a rational way.
Mhm. Agreed. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today and provide some insights into the work Cummins is doing and trends you guys are seeing in the industry.
Thank you for having us.